Hi folks, this is all the fruit, and here I'm inside the biggest feral German medlar population in all of, Germany. And they are not looking good. And don't tell me I don't know what medlars are supposed to look like. I've seen them well cultivated and feral in several countries, and also I've been taking care of this very population for well over 20 years. By taking care, I mean not just taking care with machete and chainsaw, but also urging authorities to protect those populations, making this stuff public and so on. It's a bit of an uphill battle because the medlar, despite the fact German medlar, is not considered native in Germany. Well, at the beginning it was considered native in Germany because it was found growing wild, as they assumed, not very far away from Heidelberg. And a specimen was sent to Linné, the guy who named most things, most plants and animals the way we name them nowadays. And he called it German medlar because he assumed that it's native to Germany. Later we found out that it's rather native to the Caspian and Black Sea area, and that all the populations in Germany have to be considered feral. And also because there were no old records of the medlar in Germany, it was considered basically a recent introduction. We knew from historic sources that it must have been present around here at least since Roman times. And in the 9th century, no other than Charlemagne, I have to make a video about this name. The name itself, it's a disguise, ruse, scam, whatever. Charlemagne ordered it to be grown all throughout his empire, so it must have been here, but for many decades it was considered a recent introduction because there was no archaeological proof of it. Nowadays it has been proven that it existed around here before the Ice Ages. They found it in coal, but still it's not. The authorities are very reluctant to put it on the protected species list because it's not truly native in their sense. But it's in the Red Data Book of Germany, and fortunately Heidelberg and also other surrounding areas are doing a lot to preserve it. Heidelberg was actually quite happy that I kind of discovered those plants. Of course I didn't discover them. The local villagers here from the village of Rohrbach have known about them for a long time. But they were quite happy that I discovered this as a new mascot for Heidelberg, more or less. So I've been chainsawing and macheting my way through those populations for well over 20 years now, although with some quite long interruptions, and that's why I don't like the way those plants are looking right now. It's not only that a lot of trees have fallen and crushed medlars. This happens. Trees fall after some time, and this Populus alba here is usually not intended to get too old. Also, it's not just that they are being overgrown by brambles. Also, folks, yes, it's true, you are not simply allowed to rampage through German forests with a Borneo headhunter parang. However, firstly, I'm a farmer, and secondly, I have an official contract from the authorities and the owner of this plot, and so I have a good and legit reason to do this, and so I can do this. You usually can't in a public forest or on a public land. So also those brambles are not a big problem. As soon as those twigs rot down a little bit, I'm gonna be able to move them again. Biggest problem is that a lot of those medlers are not looking very healthy. Yeah, right now towards the end of October, yeah, they start losing their leaves. But it looked similar to this even in late August. Well, what is the reason? This year was basically a very moist year, except for around 5 or 6 weeks around August, which were quite hot and dry, but no comparison to the previous years. The previous years was basically the worst instance of recorded drought around Central Europe. I remember just 10 years ago people wrote, Germany will never have water problems. We are so well supplied with water, it's unimaginable that we'll ever have water problems. And then just a couple years later, since 2018, the drought struck. I did a lot of videos on that. And yeah, the medlers, despite coming from areas which have some quite dry habitats, apparently is not adapted perfectly to this drought, because a lot of the, well, trees/shrubs suffered and a lot of them died. I hope they would recover this year, but it's often like this with trees and bigger shrubs, that because of the deep roots and because of all the problems need some time to develop and envelop the whole organism, often they get the damage after the years of drought. Well, when we are talking about anything fruit related, and especially such things as drought stress and so on, of course we have to check the geology. Here in this area we are on löss, which is a great soil for agriculture. It's feeding billions of people. Well, basically the most important agricultural areas like in China, northern India, the US, in Argentina, in Europe, are mostly löss of some type. But löss has one big problem. During drought, it dries out quite a lot. And yeah, that can cause a lot of problems, and that can cause famines, even in important agricultural areas when there is a drought. If we whacked this whole section here, as I've been doing for the last 20 years or so, one big problem is the medlers look quite good for the first like over 10 years while I was doing this, but they didn't get a lot of young plants, no seedlings, and also not too many suckers. And now, as you can see, they are dying. Also, a lot of them are not dying, but are being toppled over. Yeah, and also outcompeted. Well, I've already taken care of this Fraxinus. There is another one. Yes, I've also taken care of that one. Yeah. Wouldn't have imagined that this area would get drought problems. As you can see here, it is kind of hilly and uneven, which often can lead to problems during drought. When you look at the vegetation more closely, Mulia caerulea, a lot of brambles, and also a lot of those little springs and pig wallows. This area is known as Gazevat, which in the local dialect means goat pasture. So despite being on very fertile soil, on löss, it was used for the goats to graze, which usually you do on very bad soil. Over there, the south-facing slopes behind those trees, despite being very dry and with poor soil, were completely terraced and used for agriculture. Why not this area with several meters of good soil? Here you can see the löss on top of some sandstone rubble which the pigs and the water have washed out. Well, one hint might be the name of the road down there. Well, this part is called Roter Buckel, which basically means red hump because of the red sandstone. Further down it's called Kühler Grund, which means cool bottom. So this is a very cool and very moist area. That's why it wasn't really used a lot for agriculture, but basically people switched to the hot and dry areas on the southern slopes. And then later it was abandoned. The water was used for domestic uses for some time, but almost 20 years ago this was abandoned too. So now the whole area should be nice and humid, actually far too humid. In normal years, half of the time when you weed whack this area here, you walk through mud. This medlar here was basically our poster child in the early 2000s and even 2010s because it developed in the open, beautiful crown. You could take beautiful pictures on it, so we literally put it on posters. And it was also immensely productive. And now, as you can see, a lot of the branches are dying. Here is a new poster child growing up on the meadow. Well, a little bit more branched and shrub-like, but yeah, we shouldn't complain. And it's hanging really full of fruits. This has several hundred fruits already. The medlar is an old fruit tree introduced here by the Romans. Let's see. The fruits are not edible until they become soft and mushy. In this one, it's already slightly rotten. Same goes for this one. I can recognize them very well, even by the touch and by a little bit of taste, but a lot of people, if you give them the first medlar you give them, if it happens to be rotten, if you don't recognize that, edible but sour. September was very rainy. September, October, the crucial time for the ripening of the medlars, so they are not very tasty right now. Yeah, but when the first medlar you give to a person is rotten, it just looks like ripe and bladed and edible, but it's rotten, then they will never try a medlar again. If you are lucky with the first one, most of them will fall in love with the medlar. Yeah, pity. Central stem is still okay. Most of the big branches are dead. Well, at least it's suckering, which is not making my work more easy because I cannot weed whack around the suckers. I have to cut all the brambles by hand. Part of my job in protecting the medlars is removing trees around them. For bigger ones, of course, I will use a chainsaw, but those couple little ones here, I didn't feel like bringing a chainsaw today. Timber. Oh well, in German you have to scream Achtung! Okay, now I basically buried those poor pigs wallow. Oh, since the hunter is taking care of some of the weed whacking around here, and also of the pigs, I should be nice and not destroy their habitat. To be honest, we are all much more interested in the amphibians that spawn here in those little springs. Yeah, but for the pigs, they are wallows. Also, those medlars here don't look that great. Yeah, there are a couple big trees around them, but the trees are probably older than the medlars, so I never felt them. I'm leaving them. Yeah, not a lot of young medlars. Most of those small ones, they've been around for the 20 years, and we never really found out. We did a lot of research for several years, a lot of data collection, but still cannot figure out why it's not multiplying so fast despite our care. Over there, one which I've marked with a red and white ribbon has died. Almost died. The bigger stem has died. Yeah. Those are not looking great, despite the fact that for the last 20 years I've been removing almost all the competing vegetation. Yeah, so folks, the big problem is the drought in the last couple years, but there are also other problems with this plant, with its survival, that have been present for several decades. So don't tell me, oh, the answer is simple, it's this and that. We've been taking care of those things for decades and doing research for, well, at least half a decade in the early 2000s. But tell me, what could be a problem for those medlars apart from the drought of the last years? Especially, why are they not spreading? Why do they have problems with reproduction? Apart from that, stay tuned for a lot more fruit videos from the beautiful and incredibly fruit-rich slopes of the hills around Heidelberg. And of course, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe.